Okay, so the corrupted ones are the zombies. We've established that, there's tons of evidence in the game that is locked in, proven. But how the hell can Kraken and Aberration occur at the exact same point in the timeline when they're both in boss rush mode? It doesn't make any sense.
Ash, what are you doing? You look like some sort of conspiracy theorist.
Jade, I really don't need to listen to your corpse husband voice right now. Also, have you ever heard of knocking?
Everybody knows that doors are for the poor. Now answer my question.
Alright. You promise you won't laugh at me?
Trust me, Ash, with the things I've seen, I'm incapable of feeling happiness.
Well, you see, Jade, I'm trying to solve the SAKTK law.
You serious?
Yeah, that's right, we're back, baby. On a side note though, did you know it's almost been 2 whole years since my first SAKTK lore video? Yeah, I was 15 when I made that stinking pile of garbage. Where's your god now? Garbage might be a little harsh on myself, because despite the SAKTK updates that have crawled past us slower than a Reddit user responding to my post on asking how to fix a very specific problem I have with a piece of software which is over 10 years old at this point, the game hasn't really changed enough in my opinion to invalidate many of my epic, accurate, and true game theories that I propose to kick off this series. That's right, this is a series now. I'm going to become a Roblox YouTube commentary channel and milk this topic dry, making 17 more identical videos to this one, all covering the same topic with the exact same thumbnail and title.
Anyway, just so you don't have to click off this video, ruin my audience retention rate, and cut my views in half so I spend another 2 years of my life living inside a cardboard box, I'll briefly summarize what the SAKTK lore has going for it so far. Yes, this game has lore. I'm definitely not just making it up on the spot.
Last time on Dragon Ball Z, we attempted to piece together the different game modes seen within SAKTK and what I believe to be their canonical timeline order, using clues from around the map like missing rooms, papers found in classic mode, so on and so forth. In the end, we concluded that Area 51 storming had to be the first event in the timeline, at least from a gameplay point of view, where us, the player, team up with the leader and a group of rock-throwing energy drink homeless people to raid Area 51 successfully and free all of the chrome bald-headed aliens held within, also leaking all of the classified documents we found there and posting them on a Minecraft Discord server. Then, at some point after Area 51 storming mode, an event which the soldiers will write in their history books and tell to their children who will grow up knowing Slenderman is real, the killers eventually got angrier than a Twitter user getting mad at somebody for preparing pancakes over waffles and took over the entire area, leading to the soldiers to create the Kill House Arena to train for the upcoming battle against the killers to take back the base, because they quite literally stand completely still in storming mode and wait to die.
We didn't exactly know why the killers started attacking the soldiers seemingly out of nowhere between Area 51 storming mode and classic mode, however we know that a change of behaviour had to have happened at one point. It's the only logical explanation. I mean, that's what you get when you befriend murderers and creepypastas. You kind of had it coming to you.
The soldiers then send the last of their dog water force down to Area 51 and attempt to exterminate the rest of the bosses and killers still populating the empty halls of Area 51. To no avail, because they just keep respawning after they die, leading to the events of classic killer and boss rush mode. Then, as some sort of final battle against the last killer left in Area 51, this leads us straight into Juggernaut mode, where the soldiers team up one last time to take down the ultimate, super powerful killer which is evolved specifically for the destruction of mankind, the Juggernaut. Unfortunately for the soldiers, however, they must have been playing the mode without game passes, and were sadly unsuccessful at defeating the Juggernaut, and they all died, the end. Leading us into the final game mode of the timeline, Endless Survival, which, as the name suggests, is an endless nightmare or hell where the player is doomed to eternally fight the killers until the end of time. Sign me up, honestly. I might be fighting for my life every day, but at least I don't have to pay taxes. Then, at the end of the video, after the timeline was all complete, I straight up theorized the fact that all of the kills were just robots in disguise, Matt Pat style. Yeah, I don't know what I was thinking either. I must have been on something.
Hello, yes, I would like to find a slot for the mental hospital. What's my reasoning? You see, my twin alternate self from a different universe thinks that this Roblox game where you kill killers at Area 51 with fictional weapons has any resemblance of the story. I think they've gone insane.
What did you just do?
They will be here by the time this video is over.
Now, looking back, obviously there are a lot of things I definitely got wrong in that original video. But I'm a YouTuber, and when you're a YouTuber, you should never apologize for anything. Plus, it won't really matter in this video, so we're going to be piecing together a mystery that doesn't really have to do with any of the game game modes or timeline whatsoever. That's right, that whole previous section was utterly pointless. But for the mystery I want to discuss in today's video, I'm once again going to be flexing my infinite knowledge of this game and making up my own game theory, because I think I've done it. I think I've pieced together one of the biggest mysteries in attempting to solve this game's lore. A mystery revolving around Area 51's very inhumane experiments with controlling life and death, and how a lust for power ultimately wound up with the entire base being overrun with these bloodthirsty monsters to begin with.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest, Jade, after reading this script, I feel like one of those conspiracy theorists who finds a lump of soil in their backyard and then thinks it's an alien body. Can you, cancel my trip to the mental hospital now?
No.
To start, we need to head back, and I mean way back, even before the untimely events of Area 51 storming mode. But before we do, let me ask you a question, some cool SAKTK trivia if you will. What is the oldest killer in SAKTK? I actually figured this out while doing research for my tier list on what killer is the most attractive. Isn't that funny? Yes, that's right. If you're going to date somebody, age matters. I know, that might be a hot take. That is, unless you're going to date some super old billionaire who has a life expectancy of less than a year so that you can just run away with all of their earnings or wealth at the last second when they pass away. You see, this could be the new meta to getting rich quick. Anyway, in terms of the oldest killer, I know some of you in the audience are probably screaming Blender Man, Joff the Killer, or Hockey Mask McGee over here since they were present in some of the first versions of the game ever, but as far as we know, the correct answer in terms of the lore is actually the fan favorite Captain Zombie. I cannot begin to tell you how many people still think this guy is the best Juggernaut to play as. He isn't, by the way. Just trap his zombies somewhere, 1v1 him in the cargo area, dodge all of his attacks and win. It's the easiest fight ever. Gameplay and strategies aside, this guy is old. Like, he's almost as old as your mum type old. You see, in Captain Zombie's case file, it describes him as a, quote, 16th century pirate.
Now, I know a lot of you who watch my videos are permanently glued to your gamer chairs and don't go outside, therefore you don't know what year it is currently. However, noting that Captain Zombie is, been around since the 16th century would make him over 400 years old at the least.
Now, obviously, the reason to why this guy is so old is not because he still posts memes on Facebook in 2024, it's actually because he's infected with some sort of virus. Well, okay, that's obvious. He's a zombie. You don't get more bare bones than that. Get it? Bare bones? Because he's, like, a zombie? Zombies are dead, I think. You see, the joke is funny because, but what is this zombie virus exactly? Where did it all come from? Well, once again, the obvious answer to this question is present within Captain Zombie's case file, as it states that he, once again, quote, stumbled across an island of radiation, which is how he became the way he is. So no, the reason why he became so radioactive and toxic is not because he joined an Xbox 360 Call of Duty public voice chat lobby. We can disprove that theory immediately.
Now, we've never actually seen this so-called island of radioactivity, and it's never mentioned in the game again, but we can theorize, not really theorize, we can guess that Captain Zombie was on that island for a very long time.
I mean, it was the 16th century after all, and Area 51, at least here in the real world, wasn't acquired by the United States Air Force until 1955. And as we've theorized in previous videos, there are many hints within the game that point towards many of the events within SAKTK taking place during the Cold War. The presence of the atomic bomb within the base, and even mentions of the war itself present within Alien's case file. Man, this game is so realistic.
So we're at least looking at 430-ish years of difference between these two events, which is coincidentally the same amount of time it's going to take me to get a fanboy boyfriend in real life.
No, actually, no, I'm not gonna comment on that one.
This is not even mentioning that located around Area 51, there are many computers dotted around the location with a Windows 7 home screen present on them. And similarly to the last generation born whose brain doesn't automatically default to using words such as Sigma and Riz in every single sentence possible, Windows 7 didn't exist until 2009, pushing back the date of these two events even further apart. What I'm basically trying to say is that Captain Zombie has been infected for hundreds of years, possibly stranded on that island of radiation for all of that time, learning the wacky, warpy, and weird abilities that the radioactive substance granted him, which we'll get onto talking about a little bit later. Also because I need the YouTube ad revenue. Regardless, at one point or another, the soldiers at Area 51 discovered Captain Zombie and the island of radioactivity he'd been stranded on for all of those years and took him back to the base so that the public doesn't ever find out that radioactive infected bomb-wielding zombie pirates are in fact real. What a scam. We know this as there's clearly a Captain Zombie seen within Area 51 storming mode, meaning he was definitely one of the first killers to be brought to Area 51. Not only this, but it is in my belief that traveling to this so-called radioactive island was the building blocks that the soldiers needed to build the first atomic bomb. No, not Oppenheimer's atomic bomb, this atomic bomb, which can be found in the radioactive area in all of the modes.
It doesn't appear in Kill House mode or Boss Rush mode, so technically—
Shut up!
The creation of this atomic bomb would be the first of many, and I mean many, experiments that the soldiers would conduct on the radioactive substance. I mean, they'd already seen the effects that it had on Captain Zombie. It had clearly kept him alive for, complete isolation for hundreds of years, and they knew they had to capitalize off of it.
It's also possible that the soldiers have witnessed the substance modifying Captain Zombie's weapons to become stronger as they too were contaminated, giving special radioactive abilities to them. Although it's just as likely that the Captain Zombie's weapons were just a result of the soldiers conducting more experiments later on them, and they just gave the weapons back to Captain Zombie once they were done, it's hard to know for sure. Regardless, what is certain is that the radioactive substance, whatever it is, not only has an effect on people that it comes into contact with, but items and weapons as well. Something we definitely know about the soldiers, scientists, or employees of Area 51 is that they're like a child having unrestricted internet access at 12 years old. They're very curious people. They create bizarre rooms and structures that seem to hold no purpose in a military base whatsoever.
Like, straight up, they created a bathroom location for the soldiers, but not the killers. What happens when Ghostface over here needs to go potty? Is he supposed to just erupt in his cloak or something?
Sorry to disprove your theory, Ash, but I don't think the killers are capable of urination. I mean, it could be wrong, could be a theory for another day perhaps. Hey, I've already given you the idea for the third part in this series.
Disturbing thoughts aside, I believe that the atomic bomb was the first major experiment that the soldiers conducted using the radioactive substance. Why, might you ask? Well, it not only appears within Area 51 storming mode, which Andrew mentioned earlier in the video has been proven to be the first mode that we see in the SAKTK timeline, but it's very clear to me that at this point, much like many modern AAA gaming companies who now want to replace all of their employees with AI to manage their terrible live service games, the soldiers had no idea what they were doing. Don't get me wrong, the goal was very clear. They get a B for trying. They wanted to create some kind of ultimate weapon to end the Cold War, hence the name of the badge that you get when you walk up to it in Classic and Killer mode. However, as we know, during the Cold War, the bombs were never dropped. And as a result of this, the atomic bomb was left to rot in Area 51, quickly leaking out radioactive waste and eventually contaminating the entire location, burning away the metal walls and revealing the dirt behind them, creating what we now know as the radioactive area. You know, the one spot that every single juggernaut ever camps in to waste your time until you eventually have the balls to go up there to face the guy, but die because the game lags harder than trying to play Minecraft Java at 32 chunks or more. Yeah, that location. But even if creating the atomic bomb seemed like the Area 51 soldiers' biggest mistake initially due to how contaminated the area became afterward, quickly draining away the health of anyone who even walked into the location, the leakage of the radioactive waste within the area did create something they didn't expect. Zombies. Now, zombies have some very odd mechanics within SAKTK that are exclusive to them and them only. For one, they are the only killer in the entirety of Classic mode where more than one of them can be alive at the same time. 3 of them to be exact. This isn't true for the rest of the killers running around Area 51, as obviously there can only be one Slender Man, one Ghostface, and one Jack Torrance in existence, right? But not Zombie. And we actually have a few clues on why this is the case from Zombie's case file. Ah, you see what I did there? Quote, zombies are possibly employees who were once exposed to radiation for various experiments.
Possibly employees? So it's not confirmed? It seems to me like whoever's writing these case files really has no idea what they're talking about. I mean, I don't know what I'm talking about either, so I guess it kind of works out.
So are the zombies just turned soldiers exposed to the radiation or not? Well, it's difficult to say. About a year ago, I would have said yes, definitely, absolutely, 100%, for sure, without a shadow of a doubt, certainly, unquestionably, precisely. This is mainly because they have a clear, distinct humanoid appearance. It's not like the radioactive goop can just summon them from nothing, right? However, now that the Killer Empowerment update has blessed us and disappeared, making Freddy Krueger the most unplayable killer in the entire game, the update also gave zombies a brand new ability, which, surprisingly enough, is not actually locked behind any difficulty barrier or mode. And that ability is the fact that Zombie can now transform into a puddle to go under doors and give your entire screen a seizure when you play as him within Juggernaut or Killer mode.
You see, if there really was a human trapped inside of the zombie, begging to be free from the goopy prison at all times, then turning into a puddle would not be possible for them, at least from a scientific point of view. You know, all of their body parts, bones, and organs would just be crushed. I mean, then again, when has science really helped my case in any of my other theories? Case? I said it again. Dude, I really love the word case. They call me a case file.
Case file? But you mean like file as in... What?
If you don't believe me, look at it this way. We know for a fact that Captain Zombie used to be a good old sailor traveling the 7 seas. That is locked in, confirmed information. He used to be a human. Now look at what happens when Captain Zombie kicks the bucket on his hospital bed after his immune system finally realizes that he died from heart failure 400 years ago. That's right, he doesn't explode into a pile of goop filled with happiness. No, his body parts stay attached and solid much like the other killers. This is not to mention that Captain Zombie has many other features that make him extremely different from regular zombies. Don't call me racist for this, but his skin color is much darker, he actually has facial features like a mouth, not to mention that the whole shape of the two figures is vastly different. Also, he's not completely naked, so no censoring is needed here. What I'm basically trying to say is that the zombie isn't a result of Area 51 employees' bodies being possessed by the radioactive waste, they were created by the substance itself. I mean, one of the 3 spawning locations for the zombie is quite literally right on top of a small radioactive puddle that appears within the radioactive area, hinting at the fact that it was probably born out of the liquid directly.
But we still haven't answered the question of how the zombies were created, and I'm actually going to talk about that a bit later. Not because I want you to keep watching the video or anything, mostly because I want to discuss, all of the soldiers' discoveries in canonical order. Then it will make more sense later. Trust me. I mean, I would ask you to trust me, but then again, no one's really watched this far into the video of me talking about zombie goop the entire time. I don't know, maybe there's one person.
Anyway, after the soldiers witnessed the zombies emerging from the radioactive waste, they realized that one of their biggest mistakes may have just accidentally brought them closer to understanding how this strange radioactive substance works. And they began to conduct even more experiments in an attempt to replicate the creation of the zombies. Perhaps to create some sort of army to defend the base from possible raiders. Nah, nobody would ever raid Area 51 anyway. It's too protected to begin with. It's not like the soldiers have to stand still to aim properly and wait to die, and it's through these experiments that they are eventually able to create the first giant zombie. We know this once again as it's mentioned within its case file. After observing normal zombies, experiments on their DNA was made to search for a new, stronger type of zombie, which led to the giant zombie. This entry shows us that the soldiers still don't fully understand how the radioactive liquid really works, as there are many factors about the giant zombie that make it different and almost inferior to regular zombies. See? Size doesn't matter after all. One of the more noteworthy differences is shown when the giant zombie rolls over and dies, as it doesn't explode into a pile of goop like the regular zombie. No, it splits into several body parts, once again like most of the other killers in the game. It's also unable to change its shape into a puddle like the regular zombie. To me, this suggests that the body parts were likely welded together, almost forced into place by the soldiers creating the giant zombie. This is not a natural creation by the radioactive substance itself. Another huge clue to point towards the giant zombie being created by the soldiers is its lack of eyes compared to the regular zombie, which was probably caused after he read the AshCat X Chuggy fanfic found on Wattpad that some bozo actually created after I joked about it in my last SAKTK video. Why am I able to just speak things into existence? I have no idea.
Jokes aside, the eyes of these killers and boss, I suppose, I mean the giant zombie isn't really a boss, he's just kind of a big guy, is a very important detail which I will once again talk more about later. Just keep it in the back of your mind for now. And if you think this is just an oversight, think again.
You see, when the giant zombie eventually got updated with animations about 3 years ago, my god, I feel so old. It not having eyes compared to the regular zombie was never changed or updated, meaning that yeah, this detail is probably intentional. Actually, it probably is an oversight, but it's important for explaining things later. I don't care. It's in the game. You cannot stop me. Not only this, but in classic mode specifically, the giant zombie can only be killed with one specific weapon, also found within the radioactive area. The much loved, adored, cherished, but also ridiculed and hated ray gun. But why? Why can the giant zombie in classic mode only be damaged by this seemingly random weapon stolen directly from the Call of Duty Zombies franchise with no credit given at all? Well, I suspect that the ray gun and the giant zombie are actually made out of the same stuff, the radioactive waste. Quote from paper 1, a giant zombie is hiding somewhere, but can only be killed with our ultimate weapon. So unless the soldiers have been watching YouTube shorts with those horrible AI generated images and subtitles plastered in them with like 4 views for 2 hours straight, they are clearly aware of the connection between these two. Also, just take a look at the ray gun's ammo for a second. It's got the same symbol on it that also appears on the atomic bomb. Not to mention that the bullet projectiles it shoots are a green sphere, which is similar in color to that of the zombies and the radioactive waste. A green sphere with a hole in it. What do you call this shape again? A donut. It's a donut. The ray gun shoots donuts.
This isn't even considering the fact that the ray gun is the only gun in any of the modes that always spawns in the radioactive area when it's guaranteed. I mean, it spawns there in Storming, spawns there in Classic, and unfortunately it spawns there in Killer Mode. And Endless Mode as well. Really wish it didn't spawn in Killer Mode though, because then it just makes, you know, Killer Mode players really easy to get an OP weapon right at the start of the game, and then the killers can just never come back because the ray gun is spammable, plus it like kills you in like 4 hits. Homer, please change the location for Killer Mode, I cannot stand it.
For me at least, this represents another step in the right direction for the soldiers in attempting to understand how this strange radioactive substance works. Even though their ultimate weapon ended up failing, they were still able to make some shocking new discoveries with the radioactive goop. Before any experiments could continue, however, guess what? The leader and his army of drunk rock-throwing brutes leave the local bar just down the road and decide that breaking into Area 51, raiding the base and freeing all of the aliens from their prison sounds like a great idea. 99.9% of the raiding party die on the giant zombie stage, but that doesn't matter. They still succeeded and landed a spot in one of the top 10 greatest stunts ever pulled off in a Watch Mojo video later down the line. Now, before I go back to theorizing like a crazy person about more of the soldiers' experiments, even though like all of them died during Area 51 storming and they're just somehow back now, oops, plot hole, there is actually another pretty big mystery within SAKTK that I think everything we've talked about so far connects to. You guys remember Captain Zombie, right? No, of course you don't. It's been approximately 72 years since we've talked about him, even though he was technically the reason why Area 51 even came across the radioactive substance to begin with. Well, there is one final power that Captain Zombie possesses that I haven't brought up yet, and it might just be his most interesting and most useful ability overall, and that is the fact that Captain Zombie, for some bizarre unexplained reason that will never be answered by science or the Bible, can just summon 2 zombie minions out of thin air.
Now, to the average player like yourself, this might just be a really cool and unique ability, also a very useful one, but to me and the SAKTK lore over here, it single-handedly solves like half of the mysteries in the game. You have no idea, and I can't believe I didn't pick up on this last time.
You see, in our previous SAKTK lore video, we ran into a huge issue placing Classic and Killer Mode on the timeline, and that is mainly due to the fact that the killers just respawn after dying for absolutely no reason in these modes. I don't know, they just kind of pop into existence. Sure, they also respawn in Endless Survival mode, but again, like I said in the previous video, that can be explained away pretty easily because Endless Survival is just a dream. Also because I don't really want to find a scientific explanation for floating power-ups and perks, okay? But here's the thing, the killers also sort of respawn in Area 51 storming mode as well. You see Ghostface at the start of the game, right? Well, guess what? He's also on the second to last stage after we clearly killed him earlier, meaning that the soldiers are very much aware of this respawning or cloning power and have used it to bring the dead killers back to life. But how? And why? And where? Okay, where is not applicable here, but still, what the frick?
Now again, it's possible that all of the killers are just robots, like I said in my last video, and there's just, you know, multiple robot ghost faces running around in Area 51 storming mode, but that doesn't really explain how the killers just pop into existence right in front of you in Classic mode.
Where am I going with all of this? Well, I actually think that Captain Zombie's power of summoning these 2 zombies from nothing is yet another ability that this radioactive substance possesses. Quote from his case file yet again, he also has the power to summon his own zombies occasionally. His own zombies? That must mean that Captain Zombie himself is able to call upon his own zombies, an ability that he most likely discovered by hand from being trapped on that radioactive island for so long. But things actually get a lot more interesting when you look at one of 2 loading screen tips that reference this ability, noting that Captain Zombie can, quote, summon 2 zombies like a necromancer. Now, I'm almost confident that most of you watching this video right now have no idea what a necromancer is, so let me just do all of you 13-year-olds watching this video a favor and explain it in Gen Alpha terms for you. You see, a necromancer is actually just a wizard who is able to Sigma summon summon some uncanny skibbity guts from Ohio after they mew too hard. Guys, I'm not kidding, I actually looked up like half of the words I used for that joke. 50 Gen Alpha slangs you need to know. I'm sorry, but there's more than 50? Why learn Gen Alpha slang? Build relationships. I'm sorry, but the only relationship that you're going to be forming with someone is a very negative one if you talk to them in Gen Alpha slang. Anyway, it's also worth noting that this necromancer-like ability that Captain Zombie possesses does have its limitations. Once he dies, the zombie minions die as well, most likely because the two are bound together in some way.
Secondly, these zombie minions can only be summoned by Captain Zombie a second time after they've died, further adding evidence to the fact that Captain Zombie isn't just creating them out of thin air. Otherwise, we'd have an entire zombie army on our hands. And I don't know, that seems a bit broken and probably would cause a bunch of lag for SAKTK. I mean, people already say that Captain Zombie is one of the most broken killers in Area 51. They're wrong, by the way. Pennywise is better.
The zombies being summoned by Captain Zombie is almost exactly what we're seeing happen in Classic and Killer mode. After the killers die, again, much like Captain Zombie's minions, they take a bit to disappear, then they respawn, making note of the fact that they can only respawn after they've died. Well, I guess you can have two of the same killer if you have the Killer Choice Game Pass in Killer mode, but Game Passes aren't canon, so it doesn't matter. You see, Killer Choice you were never needed to begin with. You got a bad killer out of the Juggernaut randomizer? Yeah, just get better. It's your fault for having bad RNG. We don't need to desperately make the mode balanced for unskilled players or anything, because the only way you can consistently win in Juggernaut mode is by hiding the entire game like a wuss. Unfiltered rage aside, the fact that we see this respawning mechanic take place within Area 51 storming mode to a lesser extent tells us that the soldiers at least have some kind of idea on how it works, and at the very least are able to resurrect killers after they've died. Unfortunately, we don't know how this system works yet, and it isn't as nearly advanced as Classic and Killer mode's respawning mechanics, but I definitely think these two are connected in some way. After the events of Area 51 storming mode conclude and the soldiers didn't learn their lesson, they continued to experiment more with the radioactive substance by whipping up a brand new location that you'd never expect would appear in a military base: the sewers.
And I think I know what's going through a lot of your brains right now. Ash, what are you thinking? Have you gone insane? There's no way that the radioactive area and sewers are even remotely connected. Firstly, I went insane a long time ago. Secondly, there's actually a lot of clues hidden around Classic mode that more than connects both of these locations. Yeah, that's right, facts don't have feelings. Just like the fact that I'm the best Juggernaut mode player ever. I've never even lost a round. I've just run out of health to win.
Information that is entirely factual and not made up aside, the first thing to know about the sewers is that it's the main location for where Captain Zombie spawns in most of the game modes, which, as we've established several times, is where the discovery of the radioactive waste substance started to begin with. So it would make sense for him to be spawning in a location which is surrounded by other toxic waste chemicals. Obviously, if the soldiers were conducting more experiments on the radioactive waste, they'd want to store Patient Zero nearby. Secondly, and I know what you're thinking, what's the evidence behind this green polluted water being the same as the radioactive liquids seen in the radioactive area? Well, there are not only barrels of thick toxic waste leaking into the water, but if you go ahead and equip the zombie morph suit found on the surface that literally every killer mode survivor sweat uses before pack-a-punching all of their weapons, so I literally cannot get a single kill, have fun, or play the game at all, you can become completely immune to the radioactive area's slow poisoning effect. Not only that, but zombies in Classic mode also completely ignore you. It's like you're invisible to them, further establishing the idea that these figures don't have a human brain behind them. Or maybe they're just dumb. It's hard to tell. However, connecting the sewers and the bunker location together, as hopefully you all know by now, is a large pool of polluted water, which if you jump into, drowns you instantly. However, if you equip the zombie morph, guess what? You take no damage at all. I'm sorry, but where's the snorkel on this thing?
This alone proves that the sewer water, I'm going to call it polluted water from now on, and the radioactive substance are made of the same stuff. My theory is that the polluted water is exactly that. It's just water with some radioactive substance spilled in, making it less concentrated and more transparent. Mind-blowing information. I know.
This would also explain why zombies can't spawn from the sewer water. The soldiers must have figured out that zombies can only be created if the radioactive substance is super thick. In other words, more concentrated, as seen in the radioactive area. There is one more final ingredient to creating zombies that the soldiers didn't realize they needed at this point, but again, I'll go over that a bit later as it will make more sense then. I can actually provide evidence for it. Also, since the soldiers weren't constantly burning alive in the sewers compared to the harsh environment of the radioactive area, which which again, every single Juggernaut in every round ever camps in, this allowed them to experiment more with the radioactive substance in a more controlled setting. Remember, the soldiers have only really figured out the bare bones of what the radioactive waste can do. Bring organisms back to life, create life, and modify weapons, items, and humans to become more powerful. The first of these tests was actually accidental, as a simple fish found its way into the sewers, eventually being corrupted by the radioactive wastes and becoming the killer we all know as Fishface. Yeah, my creation is part of the lore. This is such a big win, you have no idea. We know this due to his case file entry. Quote, a normal fish that lurked in the sewers until radioactive wastes were thrown, favoring strange mutations.
It was also at this point within the story that the soldiers made yet another discovery towards the radioactive substance. It didn't just infect humans, but creatures as well. Honestly though, this radioactive substance has more abilities than the average Star Wars Disney protagonist. What does it have, like 4, 6 abilities? It's so many.
However, the soldiers soon realized that an infected fish wasn't nearly as advanced as an infected human. Sure, Fishface could vomit out piranhas and had breath worse than the average Valorant player, but it wasn't exactly what the soldiers were looking for. Sorry, Fishface. This led the scientists of Area 51 on a quest to find and infect one of the strongest creatures on Earth, a giant squid, which would later be given the name of the Kraken. I think it goes without saying that the soldiers did in fact pull an epic W, hitting the gritty Fortnite style with this one, as the radioactive substance mutated this majestic creation of nature to become a killing machine, as hinted at once again within the case file. Jesus, the case files have helped me out so much throughout this video. Quote, a giant squid thought to reside in the depths of the North Pole. Severe exposition in a toxic bassin led to the development of a third eye as well as a skin change. It was left there for scientists to examine the effects on radioactive on special creatures.
This case file entry pretty much explains everything we've been theorizing about so far. The fact that the soldiers are actually, going out and looking for the giant squid or, whatever giant animal they can get their hands on and infecting it with the radioactive substance. Probably after they witnessed, Fishface getting infected. You see, it all adds up, it all makes sense.
And I believe it was because of these experiments on the Kraken that the soldiers were finally able to figure out how this radioactive substance works, and this discovery actually leads us all the way back to the creation of the zombies. Yeah, the zombies. You remember these guys? We briefly talked about how they just kind of appeared in the radioactive area one day without any rhyme or reason. Well, I actually think I might know why, and to figure that out, we have to use details seen on all of the infected creatures we've looked at so far. Take a look at their headshot icons. Notice how all of them have red eyes? Okay, sure, Fishface has orange eyes, but did you know that Fishface originally had red eyes as well? Because I designed the model? Yes, I am the creator of Fishface, people keep asking me. But why? Why do I bring up this detail?
Well, this leads us into the final chapter of this lore video. I believe that the soldiers finally figured out what a creature needs in order to be infected with the radioactive substance, and why the zombies just randomly appeared in the radioactive area one day. And it all comes down to the one thing that SAKTK has been wanting to remove for the longest time now. Blood.
And no, this isn't just me saying blood equal red. There's actually a lot of evidence that not only supports this theory, but also the fact that I believe that this mysterious radioactive substance, again, whatever it is, it still doesn't have a name, actually helped create hate and rage, the two substances that possess and control the boss Aberration. Now, yeah, again, that seems like a stretch. I've just dumped 2 huge plot twists on you. But this is the part of the theory that I explain a lot of the mysteries that I've been cooking up over the entire course of this video so far. Trust me, this was so satisfying to put together. Just to catch you up to speed with the Aberration lore, since this girl's backstory has changed more times than my emotions when attempting a Roblox challenge video, it has been confirmed multiple times throughout the game, either in papers or through developer messages, that both Aberration and the Corrupted One minions that she can summon during the fight are contaminated with 2 substances, hate and rage. The black stuff being hate, and the bright red glowy stuff being rage. That's pretty easy to remember. According to Subatomic Sam, a former developer of SAKTK who created Aberration, then abruptly left the team after pinging everyone in the SAKTK Discord server for no reason, hate supposedly gives these entities quote-unquote life, while rage gives them quote-unquote purpose. Shameless plug, but there's actually an entire page on the wiki if you're interested in finding out more. But basically, for over the past few years, nobody really knows where hate and rage came from. They were just kind of added into the game along with a brand new location, then the entire update was scrapped and Aberration was turned into a boss because the location was too laggy. Yeah, that's right, Aberration used to be a normal killer. She sucked, if you were wondering. Might need to rephrase that.
Now, just because a lot of the lore implications that were added alongside this update were deleted instantly because the update was eventually scrapped, I don't think the origin of hate and rage were changed as well. Or at least, it's been changed to fit the new updates.
Let's start with the biggest clue that we have that connects hate to the radioactive substance. The corrupted ones and the zombies, as these guys are literally the exact same killer. All of their animations are identical, their summoning methods all revolve around spawning from a liquid which coincidentally happens to be compromised of the same substance their body is made from. Heck, they even both explode into a pile of goop when they die. Talk about reusing assets. But what I really want to focus on is the corrupted one sound design, which was actually updated fairly recently at the time of making this video. First, let's take a step back and listen to the sound that Zombie makes when they detect a player. Okay, now let's listen to the sound that a corrupted one makes when they also detect a player.
Yeah, that's right. They're basically the exact same thing, besides the fact that the corrupted one is more of like a warpy, wavy effect added on top of it. But yeah, the zombies and the corrupted ones, they're basically the same killer. I think we've already established that, but okay.
But why? Why do these two still have some differences? How did we go from zombies to corrupted ones? How did the soldiers take the radioactive substance and create hate? If hate is supposed to be a stronger version than the radioactive waste or whatever it is, they didn't really do much in making the zombies stronger, did they? Well, I think that the answers to all of these questions all come from exploring SAKTK's newest location, which is actually almost 3 years old at the time of making this video, so I guess it's not a new location. See, I told you SAKTK updates arrive slower than a Redditor responding to a problem. The laboratory location, also known as the Wendigo area because, you know, my boy Dear Gaming spawns there. No Jack Torrance, nobody cares about you, except in Juggernaut mode for some reason. He's actually good. Anyway, there are a lot of lore implications to be found in this location, and I mean a lot. But there is one room in particular that I want to focus on here. You see, there's a very mysterious location found near where previously mentioned bad hairline McGee spawns, known as the Substance Closet Room on the wiki. And let me tell ya, it's a pretty suspicious location. Inside of it, you can find a couple of strange cube objects with different color-coded labels on them. At first, I wasn't entirely sure what these were. However, by taking a look, aka snooping around at Hammer Mafia 1's inventory, it lists these 3 images as Pipe Image Optimized, Pipe Image 2 Optimized, and Pipe Image 3 Optimized. Very creative naming system.
If you haven't guessed already, then yes, these strange objects in the... What was the room called again? The Substance Closet Room? Yes, the strange objects in the Substance Closet Room are in fact pipes pumping some sort of mysterious liquid.
3 types of mysterious liquids to be exact. One labeled as polluted water, which we can pretty safely say is the same polluted water found within the sewers. One labeled as HTB-R, which can actually be found all around the laboratory/Wendigo area, being stored in tubes and boxes, I assume. And lastly, we have R-C, which, by judging from the purple color we see on the pipes, is most likely the same liquid we can find being stored in the bunker and in the Cleaner 2 location. Yeah, I know you forgot this area existed too. Cleaner 2? I forgot the Cleaner 2 existed too. I think that most of you have already probably figured out where I'm going with this. I strongly believe that R-C, the polluted water, and HTB-R all combine to create hate and rage. Let's start by uncovering the identity of HTB-R. Yeah, I think this substance is very clearly supposed to be a stand-in name for rage. They have the exact same color and glow to them. Yeah, kind of an anticlimactic conclusion here. Even the wiki makes note of it.
But then we run into the issue regarding the name of the substance, HTB-R. I mean, it obviously stands for something. And honestly, this is where the wiki comes in clutch once again.
Well, at first I thought that HTB was just a code for something and R meant rage, but thankfully the theorists over on the wiki came in clutch here once again. Seriously, this site is amazing. It's filled with tons of information that even I didn't know about. For example, did you know that the sound that plays when Kraken uses his vomit gas attack is just a slowed down version of the infamous diarrhea sound effect? Yeah, take a listen to this. Insane revelations that will change the future of the human race aside, during one of my late night browsing sessions, I came across a theory on the wiki that suggested that HTB-R simply stands for Human Test Blood Red. I mean, it's got a distinct red color to it, the name seems to line up perfectly, and plus it pretty much explains everything we've been theorizing about so far in this video to do with how the creatures are infected with the radioactive substance and polluted water. Let me show ya. The fact that HTB-R and polluted water are paired up together here in this room is a very interesting combination. Feel free to ignore whatever R-G is for now, we'll get back to that in a bit. But remember how I was talking about the eye color of all of the creatures infected by the radiation thus far, explaining how they were all a suspicious red color that I kind of just threw out there and never mentioned again? Well, I suppose that blood, human or not, is what a creature needs to be infected after they come in contact with the radioactive substance. It's a requirement. It doesn't matter what the creature is, as long as it has blood to use as some sort of template, it's able to become infected. I theorized that rage is simply just a code word for blood. I mean, hate and rage does sound a lot better than hate and human test blood red, don't you think? Also, remember what Subatomic Sam mentioned about hate and rage earlier. Rage gives whatever creature it infects purpose. The only way for hate, or in other words the power of the polluted water, can control a host is because of rage, or in other words blood.
I also believe that this explains why the zombies appeared out of nowhere in the radioactive area. Yeah, the zombies. You remember that old mystery? I don't know, you might need to rewind the video to give me more ad revenue.
Now, I did mention this earlier, and it's also hinted with the zombies case file, but many people still believe that the zombies were a result of dead Area 51 employees succumbing to the radioactive poisoning. Riddle me this, Batman, if that were true, why doesn't the player instantly turn into a zombie through that method after they die? Well, okay, it would probably make the game lag a ton if you could just endlessly summon zombies by dying in the radioactive area over and over again. I'll give you that. But I actually think this mystery is very easily cleared up now we know that the infected creatures require blood in order to survive. I think what happened is that employees did die into the radioactive area, as hinted with the zombies case file. However, the thick, concentrated radioactive substance got a hold of their blood, and created almost incomplete clones of the dead employees. That's why they have a distinct yet almost distorted blocky humanoid shape that can also transform into a puddle, have red glowing eyes which are used to represent their blood or rage, as well as the fact that their skin is just much lighter than the typical infected creature we see throughout SAKTK. They are purely just the radioactive substance with some blood spilled in. That's why the case file says that they are possibly employees. Because, yeah, technically they still have the blood of the employees still in them, but they're technically not the employees, they're just clones.
Lastly, and this is probably my favorite detail that was left in by the developers, it also links up and confirms that the giant zombie was created by the soldiers in an attempt to understand the radioactive substance.
Sure, there's already evidence in the game that hints at this, like the fact that the giant zombie appears within Area 51 storming mode, the first game mode in the timeline. I've said that a million times throughout this video, but also because the giant zombie doesn't have eyes, a detail that I yet again pointed out earlier. It's not because the guy is blind or anything, no, far from it. It's because when the soldiers created the giant zombie, they still weren't aware that blood was a key component in giving an infected creature purpose. Since hate is made up of the radioactive substance, this is evidence that you can have hate without rage. In other words, you can have a life without a purpose. It's called being an online influencer. Anyway, now that we've cleared up that mystery, I hope I haven't made any of your brains turn into mush yet. Blood is basically rage. We've confirmed that. But what about hate? Obviously, hate and the radioactive substance still have some differences. The color of the two liquids are different, not to mention that hate is arguably much more powerful than the radioactive substance, and I think this is where the mysterious liquid R-Z comes into play.
But what is R-Z exactly? Well, the answer to that question is, I have no idea. No, seriously, I don't. I don't have the slightest clue. It's one of SAKTK's great mysteries that probably only I care about.
As mentioned earlier, we do see a purple liquid sitting in the bunker and sewer area found near Cleaner 2, but I'm still really stumped on what R-Z stands for, as there really isn't enough evidence in-game for me to come to any reasonable conclusions. It's definitely similar to the already existing green polluted water, so I'm guessing R stands for radioactive here, but it still doesn't explain the sudden color change between the two. The only real info we have on R-Z is written down on a paper also found within the laboratory, where presumably one of the scientists that worked there wrote down how they recently discovered how useful R-Z is, and how they were pumping it away a few weeks earlier, likely referring to Cleaner 2, and how they can make almost anything with this technology. Make anything, you say? Are you perhaps referencing the Pack-a-Punch machine by any chance? Yes, I know this is another mechanic ripped directly from Call of Duty duty zombies over here, but think about it for a second. R-Z is a purple liquid. You want to know pretty much the only other instances of the color purple appearing within SAKTK, besides on Captain Zombie's Halloween skin, but that doesn't count because it's probably non-canon. That's right, when you insert a weapon into the Pack-a-Punch machine's mouth, it spits it out in a purple color, but it also makes the weapon more powerful with an increased mag size and damage. Plus, guess what? The Pack-a-Punch machine also doesn't exist within Area 51 storming mode, implying that it must have been created later on, i.e. when the Area 51 employees conducted more research on the R-Z liquid.
Do I think that Mafia1 or any of the developers had liquid R-Z in mind when adding the Pack-a-Punch machine to the game? No, absolutely not. There is no way. I mean, I'm just kind of making random connections here. I don't even think that R-Z has any connection to the Pack-a-Punch machine. But you know, it kind of explains it. It doesn't really require too many leaps of faith. That's kind of the whole point of this video. It's not really, you know, solving the SAKTK lore, just kind of connecting things together that seem to fit, but maybe they don't. I mean, you know, the SAKTK lore's already all over the place right now. I feel really bad for the storyline developers, or maybe SAKTK doesn't even have any storyline developers. I feel really bad for the storyline developers in SAKTK because trying to understand this game's lore is probably a huge headache. It's literally a game where you freaking fight serial killers in Area 51 with Call of Duty weapons. I don't know how you explain that.
Even if we do tie the liquid R-Z to the Pack-a-Punch machine, we still really don't have enough evidence to explain its properties. Unlike what we see happen to the radioactive substance over here, where there are layers upon layers of evidence hinting at its abilities. So I'm just gonna say that R-Z makes whatever it touches more powerful, kind of going off what the paper said earlier. But even by ignoring all of this evidence so far, there is one final undisputed fact that connects both of these liquids to hate. Their colors. Yeah, a lot of color theory in this video, Ash. And what do you get when you combine the green color of the polluted water with the purple color representing R-Z? That's right, black. Well, okay, technically a dark gray depending on the saturation of the colors being combined, but still, it's the exact same color as hate. The evidence is right there. So, mystery solved, right? Polluted water, R-Z, and HDP-R all combined to create hate and rage. Two substances which an Area 51 robotic scientist who would later become known as Aberration would be infected with.
However, I believe that we can take this theory even further. Remember how earlier in the video I was kind of just yapping about how, you know, Captain Zombie summoning his minions out of thin air might have something to do with the classic and killer mode respawning mechanics? You know, how the killers just kind of pop into existence? Yeah, let's revisit that theory for a second.
Well, we also see a similar mechanic being used during the Aberration boss fight, as she is able to summon her corrupted one Sims at will from a goopy hot tub of hate we see here, that she probably sits in while streaming on Twitch. Okay, maybe that part isn't canon.
However, what I believe is that Aberration, and hear me out for a second, is actually the reason as to why the killers are respawning in both classic and killer mode. And she's actually the one behind the killer revolution and why the killers, you know, turned hostile from storming mode to classic mode. And it all has to link up with her case file.
Goodness me, again with the case files? Also, sorry I was gonna have to cancel your trip to the mental hospital. They thought I was you for some reason. What? Did I just use a door?
Quote, a captured scientist in the heart of darkness. She came in contact with hate, a dangerous substance that took half of her body over. Now she is the single largest threat in the area. Heart of darkness, you say? That's a very interesting string of adjectives to be using here. Almost as if she is literally being compared to a heart. And no, I'm not referring to my SAKTK dating tier list here. Let me ask you all, what does a heart do? Sorry, I wouldn't know. My heart has been shattered for around 6 months because my crush said no. Jokes aside, one of the basic functions of a heart is controlling the entire body. Usually when people refer to a heart within fiction, they're actually referring to the source of something. I recently made a 2-hour-long video on the Roblox game Lumion Legacy, and the source for the power of that game, which is basically just Mega Revolution from Pokemon by the way, was quite literally just a heart. Like straight up, just a heart, just sitting there. Also in her case file, it mentions that Aberration's the quote, single largest threat in the area. Now I can tell you that I've fought Aberration countless times, and honestly, yeah, she's really not that strong. As shown here, I beat her using nothing but the Deagle, because I can. That is, unless you're fighting her elite form. But I don't think elite bosses are canon, so that doesn't count.
However, the weird wording of this case file would make perfect sense if it was Aberration controlling all of the killers, probably through hate. Of course, we don't know how or why yet, and we don't know how hate would get, into the killers. But think back to Area 51, storming mode. Of course, hate didn't exist back then, so it was probably the radioactive substance mind-controlling all of the killers. I mean, why would Slenderman over here, willingly, work alongside the soldiers? Doesn't really seem to make a lot of sense to me. I mean, to be fair, Slenderman isn't in Area 51 storming mode, so I guess we could... not really a good example. How about the Rake? The Rake's in Area 51 storming mode. Why would a random monster just, help humans? It doesn't really make much sense to me. So I think that back then it was probably the radioactive substance, mind controlling all of the killers, and then, when hate came around, they kind of swapped that over for hate. Hate controls all the killers now, and it's Aberration who's now mind controlling all of the killers. You see, this gets really confusing, and Aberration's bringing them back to life every single time, like in Classic and Killer mode. Actually, that kind of makes a bit more sense. Yeah.
We also know that the soldiers were clearly aware of Captain Zombie's ability to bring back the dead, which we connected to the killers being able to appear multiple times in storming mode. So what if the radioactive substance, or in other words hate, is actually the thing that's been mind controlling them this entire time, at least within Classic and Killer mode? This is further backed up with a message from one of the developers from SAKTK Discord, HT Snaps. As when yes that's right, me, AshCat, asked him whether or not all of the killers are infected with hate and rage, he said something like that. Yeah, that's a pretty big bombshell, and honestly it makes perfect sense if you think about it for even a millisecond. Aberration, as far as we know, is the first human to be infected with the hate and rage substances, which probably allows it to tap into the minds of all of the other killers in Area 51, causing them to rebel against the soldiers, beginning the so-called killer revolution. I mean, if I was trapped in a room for the rest of my life, I'd probably want to get my revenge on my captors as soon as possible. Yeah, that definitely sounds like a plan. I don't know, that's just something I would do. We know this as humans infected with the radioactive substance which makes up hate, like Captain Zombie, possess the ability to control and manipulate the minds of the dead, bringing them back to life at will. And because all of the killers are infected with hate to be mind controlled by the soldiers probably, this allows Aberration to make use of the necromancer-like abilities similarly to that of, again, Captain Zombie, constantly bringing the killers back from the dead shortly after they've died over and over again for all eternity, explaining the respawning mechanic in Classic and Killer mode that quite honestly makes no sense at all. And for the cherry on top that completes the theory that Aberration is somehow connected to all of the killers in a very similar way to how Captain Zombie is connected to the zombie minions, take a listen to the audio that plays when Aberration dies, or is defeated, I guess. We don't actually know if she dies, she just kind of sinks back into her goopy Twitch streaming hot tub. I don't know, maybe she got banned. Of course she has her normal scream sound effect, but the sound that plays directly after this is very puzzling to me. It sounds again like a scream of some sort. Perhaps it's a cry from help from one of you guys after going into my comment section and reading all of the "can you friend me" or "are you gay" comments. You can make up your own mind on that one.
But to me, this scream sounds a lot more warpy, a lot more alien if you will. It's probably not coming from Alien himself, we can disprove that theory immediately, but it's definitely not coming from Aberration, or at least, her vocal cords, her mouth. It's not her, she just screamed a second ago. So what even is it?
Well, according to the wiki, it's titled as Aberration's quote-unquote illusion sound in the game files. And yeah, that doesn't really help us here. What, is it actually an illusion? Is it not real? Similarly to my life outside of YouTube? Think back to what happens to the zombie minions when Captain Zombie kicks the bucket. That's right, they die as well. If we're saying Aberration is controlling all of the killers and bringing them back from the dead over and over, wouldn't that also mean that when she dies, all of the other killers immediately fall over and spontaneously combust? What if this illusion sound is exactly that? An illusion, a representation of all of the killers screaming in pain and dying after Aberration, the figure controlling all of them, was finally defeated. Again, I know this is a huge stretch and it does kind of mess up my timeline a bit, but I honestly think that all of the pieces are pointing towards this conclusion. And, it does actually kind of make sense if you think about it. And yes, before you ask, I know, this does contradict with a lot of stuff I said in my previous video about all of the killers being robots, as we have made a leap in trying to figure out the lore of this game larger in size than the hate I have for quote-unquote AI influencers who imagine a world where people do nothing all day while a computer just makes them all of their money online. With this thought in mind, I think that just about wraps up this extension to the SAKTK timeline. It's definitely looking a lot more complicated compared to the last video, and we're gonna keep adding to it. When I make a part 3, hopefully it won't be 2 years down the line though. Yeah, I'm gonna have to end the video here, unfortunately. The script is 21 pages long, and I actually want to get a video out as soon as possible because it's been like 2 months. Sorry guys, I'll try to make more videos. I have like some ideas in mind, but trying to find motivation for this game is very difficult when there's not updates coming in every week.
Wait, Ash, before you wrap up the video, aren't you going to say the line?
I'm sorry, what do you mean? What line? Am I supposed to say something?
You know, the line. That's just a theory, a game theory. You know, that line. Aren't you gonna say it? You said it in your last video.
Okay, Jade, but let's be honest. This wasn't really a theory video, was it? It was more of just a guess. Yeah, just a guess. I took some huge leaps in this video. So maybe I should say, but that's just a guess. A SAKTK guess. I'm gonna go shower now. I have not washed in 3 days because I've been working so hard on this video. Good God, I stink.